Hey everyone. I hope you're feeling better than I am this morning. Want to start off by again apologizing for the personal grief and stress that I caused everyone, especially to Chris, since I know he's the one that had to deal with the aftermath of everything that happened. Um, and I want to thankful for the opportunity to defend myself. So, two things I want to make clear. One, I am not defending collusion or that collusion should be allowed. I think that's obviously something that we don't want in the league. And the league is better without having that in it. Um, and two, the actions taken by myself and then I made Simon complicit were not malicious. And so we never thought that it would go this far. I submitted what I thought was an incredibly egregious, one-sided, unfair trade that would just single signal alarms to everyone, and to some it did. Um, but we never thought the trade would actually be approved. For those of you that didn't look at it closely, I traded my QB1 with no backup, my RB1, RB2, RB3, RB1 being the number one overall pick, RB2 being Fournette coming off 200 plus yard performance, and me being a huge Jags homer, and then in return, I basically got a bunch of bench receivers from Simon. And then I think Kevin maybe started it or someone, but they started defending the trade. And I understand the principle that they were trying to defend it of bad versus collusion. And so on some level, you have to allow bad trades to go through. But I really did think this trade was so bad that there's no way anyone would vote it through. For even to keep the competitive balance in the league, it just completely threw everything off. So this is where I think I made my like crucial mistake. Instead of when that started happening, instead of kind of stopping the train there, I think I found too much amusement in the people that were going to actually approve it. So I didn't speak up, and then once it got through, I then thought, okay, well, let me confess to Chris. I told Chris that this was collusion, and again, this was not a malicious intent. Did not mean it to go through. Once it did, it was self-reported. It's not like we got caught in this after the fact, and I think people have maybe lost sight of that a little bit. But I won't digress too much into that. And so once it was self-reported, what I thought the actions would be taken was through league manager tools. Chris would drop players, add players, so the rosters are back and restored. Add a rule. I would be told, you're a dumbass, don't do that. And then there would be obviously a rule written, and then a conversation sparked about what kind of started all this, at least from my perspective. So because the Swifter action wasn't taken, and probably rightfully so by Chris, because he really wanted to do this the right way, and he did a great job with the write-up and everything. And so because of all that, I really did cause a lot of grief to a lot of people, specifically, again, Chris, and I'm very sorry for that. So kind of how this started from my perspective is John got caught with the adding the same point. I forget if it was for the high or low as Rashid, and then didn't get punished for it on the grounds that it was not a written rule. And so I had a couple issues with this. One, it was a rule that we all agreed upon and discussed, and John was present for that discussion that happened before our draft. And so he agreed to it. And I understand that it wasn't written, but this document is also not a complete rules. To be fair to Chris, while he's done an amazing job with it and it continues to grow and become better and better, it's just unreasonable to think that in a rules document's infancy that everything is going to be covered. And it seemed like it was just an arbitrary, well, it's not in the rules, so let's not do it, which I think is a dangerous path to go on. And I think I demonstrated that, albeit by putting, I think as Nuke put it, or as Chris put it, setting off a nuke on an anthill. And obviously very poor execution. And I didn't think, I don't think I put enough thought into, well, how could this go bad and what would be the ramifications on a personal level. For the most part, my thought process was in the rules and within the fantasy structure. And I didn't ever really stop to think, well, how would this actually affect my friends? And so I think that was my glaring mistake in not giving that enough consideration. So back to John's situation, he wasn't punished for a rule we all agreed upon, and the reason was that it wasn't written down. But we also, as a group, never agreed upon that if it's not in the document, it's not written down, or if it's not in the document, it's not to be followed. So I felt like this was an arbitrary decision made by Chris, which will come in play later for my argument. And it was also never written down in the document that if it's not written down, it's not a rule. So you would think if you had a rules document that you said was this is the only rules and all the rules are contained in this, that would be the first rule, right? That you would clarify that this is the ultimate document that we adhere by. So Chris originally was going to dock the point. I think one or two people said that was unfair to Rashid, which I agree. Rashid shouldn't be punished. And then Chris said, oh, okay, I don't think people knew about the rule or something like that. And I just said, well, he's getting the point. I feel like there should have at least been a vote in this case because I don't believe that more people didn't know about the rule than did know about the rule. I felt like this was a pretty clearly discussed one, but I could be wrong on that. But I would have liked to see a vote on it. So I tried kind of arguing my point, and it was just kind of washed away with, well, if it's not in a rules document, it's not a rule, which to me is, again, kind of a crux that we don't want to have on us. That's going to really limit Chris on decisions he can make and take, and really, I think ultimately make his life harder. So ironically, I say that because I know I made his life harder this week. And so I explicitly asked Chris, if it's not in the rules, do I have to follow it? And he said no. He did ask me to please don't do anything that will cause him stress, but I basically responded with, well, I will take advantage of it and then I'll report it. And that was in my dumb way of making a more dramatic effect. So Chris gave me permission to do this in the sense that, hey, if it's not in rules, it's not a rule. Go find some wiggle room, as John said. So I started looking at the document, and I really thought I was going to find something kind of small to bring to everyone's attention and kind of get the conversation started from that point. After looking at it for a while, I was like, oh shit, well, there's nothing about collusion, so I went down that path. Again, and I'm not stressing that what John did and what I did, consequence-wise, is remotely the same. Comparing to like theft and murder, obviously the punishments should be different, but I feel like the due process should be the same. So with John, Chris's ruling was basically, it's not written in the rules. We will add it to the rules. So we made an amendment, but he will not be punished because it wasn't written in the rules. In the same sense, I feel like because that's the precedent, that's how I should be treated. With the caveat of obviously restoring the league, because a league that has collusion in it is not one I really want to, not one I want to be in, and not one that's actually, I think, fair and fun for everyone. So if my case is, and Simon's case is treated the same way, it should be, we revert back, we add this new rule, we revert back the roster to the state it's in. But to then punish me on it is, I think, hypocritical since John didn't get punished. And this is where I went to the spirit of the law, letter of the law, and also fair treatment to everyone. I'm not saying I'm picked on, but I do know for a fact that if that was Simon and John's situation on Wednesday that put the point, I have almost no doubt Chris would have looked at that differently. I know he tries to be extremely level-headed, and he does a good job of that. and puts personal differences aside. But at the same time, when you look at when the vote was, well, let's kick Simon out for not being negligent basically to his team. Chris had a bigger issue with Simon doing that than John. John was basically AWOL for a whole season, but the focus was on Simon. So I think that's why it's important to have the due process be the same, because then otherwise we're arbitrarily treating different people differently based on the rules, and I don't think that's fair. So on Wednesday, the precedent was set that if it's not in the rules, then it's not a rule. There was a verbal agreement to that. And again, I had no malicious intent in this, and I would understand that, and I would actually, like, if I got caught in collusion, obviously the right action would be to kick me out, and then deal with the aftermath from there. But that's not what happened. I tried to make a point dramatically in bad taste, without considering my friends in this, just considering the rules and the structure, and got too focused in on that. And so I don't mind then saying, well, okay, I did do something that should be punished. But my issue with the punishment that's being suggested is not the strike itself. I'm fine with that. That keeps me honest the rest of the year. And next year, I'm obviously going to set my lineups. I care about this league. But my bigger issue is the -5 points, because that doesn't affect my current season. That affects my next season. So my next year's draft, and ultimately the quality of my team next year is now being punished for something I did this year. And again, I did not do anything malicious. I did not do anything that was against our rules. And while I didn't ever imagine it would get to this point, I did say I was going to do this, and it was like okay, do it. Obviously, myself and no one else imagined it would be fucking collusion. But either way, I think that the fact that we're obviously trying to right this, we're the ones that were, hey, no, reverse the trade. Obviously, this shouldn't go through. This isn't fair to everyone. I think that there needs to be at least some consideration on that. And then even more so for Simon, I'm the one that started all this. I approached him. He was like, there's no way this trade's going to go through, but fine, I'll amuse you. And so then I feel like I'm additionally, the punishment additionally isn't fair to Simon, since I'm the instigator and I'm the one that started all of this. So I think a fair compromise is for me to get a strike, but not the -5 points. Obviously, I don't think it's a good idea to leave everything undone, leave everything unpunished. But I also don't think that this warrants my next season being affected, or Simon's next season being affected. There's one more thing I wanted to stress. I'm trying to remember what it was. But I think this is a pretty kind of good summary. I'm a little hungover, so I don't think I was quite as coherent as I wanted to be with my argument. But I hope you got the gist of it. And again, really sorry to everyone that caused grief. I know if it makes you feel any better, I felt a lot of guilt on Thursday and Friday night. And I obviously miscalculated the weight that this would have on my friends, and I apologize for that. But please understand, it wasn't malicious. It was also within the rules, and there's a precedent that was set that if it's not in the rules, then it's not a rule, which I think is dangerous. And talking to Chris yesterday, we feel like, or he at least made the statement that while this was a really shitty thing to do and unfair to a lot of people, the league is ultimately better for it, which was always my intent. However hard that seems to believe, because I know some of you are still really, really mad at me, and may not have even watched this video, so who knows. But anyways, thanks for listening to me. I'm not really going to do a back and forth. This is kind of what I had to say. If you have any questions to clarify anything, I'll be more than happy to answer anything like that. But just wanted the opportunity to defend ourselves, defend Simon. Again, I kind of made him complicit in this. And thanks for listening. Hit like and subscribe.